Welcome to Passion for Sound, the channel dedicated to thorough and honest reviews of headphones, earphones, DACs, headphone amps, other components and accessories. Basically everything audio related except power amps and passive speakers. My name's Lachlan and my goal is to explore and discuss all kinds of audio topics, even the controversial ones, to help us all find more enjoyment from music. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. And today, a bit of a surprise review. This was not in my schedule originally, but an opportunity arose for me to check out the Gieseler Audio Kompakt R2R NOS DAC. I'll tell you more about it in just a moment, but there's a couple of things I want to cover off before I get to the review. The first is I want to announce the winner of the recent giveaway of the Samsung Galaxy Buds Live. Those have been won by viewer Nicola Serrano. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Nicholas or Nicola, I think. And he's won himself the Galaxy Buds Live and also a copy of this hoodie. Nicola's idea that he put forward was to have the image of the sound wave of the word passion. That one took my fancy because obviously the channel is all about sound and it's passion for sound. So the two of those combined, to me, I thought made for a great hoodie. But I am workshopping one more idea still. I haven't let the person know that I am, but of course if I do use any other ideas from the recent giveaway, I will definitely reward the people that have provided them. So do stay tuned, make sure you stay subscribed because there might be another announcement to come. In addition to that, I've also got a new giveaway now starting. This time, it's for the Palmu Quiet Mini IEMs. These are another wireless in my roundup of these, along with things like the Samsung Galaxy Buds Live, Galaxy Buds Pro, etc. These to me, whilst much cheaper than the Samsung Buds, really came close to matching them on sound. I've kept a pair of these in my collection because I enjoy them so much, both in terms of fit, but also in terms of sound quality. So I've got a brand new pair here, ready to give away to a lucky viewer and subscriber. If you want to be in the draw, what you need to do is hit the subscribe button straight away and then leave a comment down below about an area of the audiophile hobby that you would like to know more about. So maybe you want to understand frequency responses better. Maybe you want to understand how to read specifications better. Whatever it is, what's something that you would like to know more about or something that confuses you when it comes to the audiophile hobby. And I'll be drawing the giveaway in about 4 or 5 videos time. This one's based purely on random number generation, so all you need to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment down below that qualifies, i.e. it's something that you want to know more about, and that's enough to get you in the draw. It doesn't matter what your idea is, so long as it's relevant to my question. And so with the announcement of the winner and the start of the new giveaway out of the way, let's now talk about the Gieseler Kompakt R2R NOS DAC. The Kompakt R2R NOS DAC, as you see here, is a very compact device. There's no surprises where its name came from, that's for sure. The other DAC that I've got here in front of me is the Topping D90 SE, which is also coming up for review very, very soon. It's just landed, so I do need a little bit of time to get my thoughts together, but it won't be far down the track. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see that review. The reason I've got the D90 on my desk is because I wanted to show you just how compact the Kompakt is. It's a little bit thicker than the D90, but it's a significantly smaller footprint. So I don't know if you can see there. It does reduce the overall footprint by a fair amount. It's not a tiny DAC, but nor would you expect it to be given the level at which it performs and the price at which you're paying for it. So this is going to retail, and it's not quite released yet, but it's going to retail for 1,500 Australian dollars, and that equates to about 1,100 US dollars, not including any shipping or import taxes or anything like that. I don't know how that's going to work, but I do understand that it's meant to retail here in Australia for 1,500 Australian dollars. And I should also specify that Gieseler Audio is an Australian company. So if you're outside of Australia and you've never heard of them before, that's not a wonder, but they've got an excellent reputation here in Australia for building fantastic sounding DACs and also excellent linear power supplies. I'm actually already using Gieseler linear power supplies for both my M-Scaler and also my JCAT network and USB cards, and they're absolutely fantastic. I am planning on releasing a review of the linear power supplies soon, so also stay tuned for that one if you're interested. The reason I'm telling you all this is to let you know that Gieseler is not some brand new product or brand new brand. They've been around for quite some time and they've got an outstanding reputation here in Australia and in New Zealand, but I think they also deserve to have a good reputation anywhere in the world. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. One final thing I should mention before I start talking about the specifications, the features, and the sound of the compact R2R NOS DAC is that there is a chance that it might get ever so slightly tweaked between now and when it goes to launch. Having said that, it already sounds so good that if there's any improvements to be had, it's only going to get better. And so with that little teaser, let me tell you about what's going on inside the compact R2R NOS DAC. From here forwards, I'm going to refer to it only as the compact. There have been over the years a number of different compact designs, but because some of the previous designs used AKG DACs, there's been a little bit of a pause in production whilst Clay from Gieseler Audio finds a new alternative to the AKM DAC chips since the fire. So what's going on inside the compact that I've got here is a pair of AD1862 R2R chips. These chips are new old stock and they're not cheap. So on parts alone, for the chips alone, nothing else, there's a couple of $100 Australian worth of chips just for the DAC processing. That's not including the PCBs, the power supply, the resistors, capacitors, the other chips that control the operation of the DAC chips, and of course the output stage design as well. So there's lots going on here over and above those chips, but we're already at $200 Australian parts cost just for the chips themselves. And that in part goes to explain the $1,500 Australian price tag. Not that I'm trying to justify the price on Clay's behalf, because I do believe it performs at a level where it's a completely reasonable price tag. I just wanted to share with you some of the things that go in to making a DAC like this when it's a little bit unique and a little bit different. As you'd have gathered by the name, the two AD1862 chips are running in non-oversampling mode, and they're fed by an Amonero USB card, which I've had very good experiences with in both the Gieseler J2 and now also in the Gieseler Compact here. And then as you'll see if I turn around the unit, we've also got optical and coaxial inputs too. So all of our digital inputs on the back, they're all our standards. We've got coaxial SPDIF, we've got optical, and we've got USB. In addition to that, we've got XLR and RCA outputs, so balanced and single-ended. You've got the ability to toggle the RCA ground should you need it. That can help, I believe, with ground loops, although I haven't played with that to be honest. And then finally we've got an AC input socket. So this DAC, unlike many of Clay's other DACs, this DAC does run an AC wall wart style power supply and therefore does not work with the Kraftwerk linear power supplies. So do keep that in mind. If you're buying this thinking you're going to upgrade it with one of his power supplies, it's not an option. It is an AC input, and in talking to Clay, that's because he needs to then run two different sets of positive and negative rails off that input, and therefore power management is handled internally rather than using linear power supplies. The good news is that knowing Clay's expertise in building power supplies, I do expect that what's going on in here is of high quality and therefore is not going to be hugely different to what you get if you were running one of the Kraftwerks. Flipping back around to the front, things are very, very simple on the front. We've got the on-off switch here with a blue LED. And then over on the other side, we've got I'm going to start on this far end, we've got the input selector switch, USB, coaxial or optical, and then we've got a couple of filter switches. So unlike some of the fancy DACs, including things like the D90 here, unlike those, this doesn't have some array of 7 or 8 filter choices. It's got two very simple analog filters, which can be switched on and off with these toggle switches, and those analog filters are all occurring after the DAC itself. So the processing is all done always the same way, and then what these two toggle switches do is just apply some filtering in the analog domain to the analog signal after the signal's left the DAC. Both of these filters are high frequency filters operating apparently in around about the 50 kHz range, and helps to tame a little bit of excess treble that comes out in terms of the raw signal to help make the sound a little bit more natural and true to source. I'll talk shortly about how it sounds with and without those switched on when we get into the sound quality details. But first, let me give you a general summary of what I heard with the compact. Now my initial listening tests were all done with the filter switches both on, which is in the down position, and what I heard was a DAC that is very smooth and very enjoyable, but not overly rolled off or thick. The tonality is really natural, with no sense of emphasis anywhere, but it has got just the tiniest touch of warmth compared to something like a Delta Sigma DAC. Now I'm not comparing it specifically to the D90 at this stage, I'm just giving you a general sense of it. The imaging is clean and well focused, and the soundstage has really nice width, but I was surprised to hear that it hasn't got a huge amount of depth, and I'm wondering if that's to do with the output stage that Clay's designed here, as opposed to the chip itself, and I don't know the answer to that one, I'm just theorising there. It's certainly not a bad soundstage, but R2R are often very spacious sounding DACs, and the Kompakt here, whilst it's got great space left to right and good separation of sounds, didn't give me the sense of depth that I was expecting. I'll provide more details about that when I get to the comparisons. It's certainly not bad in terms of depth, but it's not expansive like some R2R DACs can be. Overall, I've described the Kompakt in my notes as a very enjoyable and a highly listenable DAC. I don't have the Denafrips Aries 2 here anymore, but I know that's a DAC that many of you are going to be curious about how this compares to that, because they're both R2R. The Aries, of course, is a full ladder DAC, whereas this is a chip-based R2R DAC. And what I can tell you is that the Aries 2 left me just a little bit cold after listening to it, which is kind of ironic given that it's a warm sounding DAC. But my point being, it was lacking something. It was lacking a bit of energy and attack in the sound that never got me particularly excited or engaged in the music. The good news is the Kompakt doesn't suffer from that same problem. It's got the right amount of attack and energy in the music, but it still maintains a very smooth and enjoyable listening experience. As I said before, I'm going to provide some very direct and specific comparisons shortly, but before I do, let me circle back around to these filter switches. As I already mentioned, they're analog filters operating in the 50 kHz range, but they do affect down around the 20 kHz at the edges of their effect. What I heard as I switched them on and off was that having just one of them applied, and it doesn't matter which one, so it's two identical filters, you're just applying one of them or both of them, and it doesn't matter if A is on its own or B is on its own. It's just that you can have one of them on, or both of them on, or both of them off. What I found as I tried the various combinations, having both of them off brings a bit of harshness to the treble that to me is not preferable. Having one of them on and one of them off is a potentially nice compromise should your system need a little bit of extra detail in the treble. The treble quality with both switches off to me is not fantastic, but by just adding one of the filters you can tame any harshness or graininess in the treble and still retain a little bit of extra treble information or extension to brighten up your system if it needs it. My preference for my listening with headphones and the amplifiers that I have here is to have both of them switched on in the down position, but I like the fact that you've got the option of bringing just a little bit of extra treble energy in should your system want it. So at this point in isolation, what I'm hearing is a really fantastic sounding DAC. Whether I was using coaxial or optical or USB, all inputs sounded equally enjoyable and great. Likewise, I didn't notice any glaring differences between the XLR and the RCA, but having said that, I do want to put the caveat on this that this has been a quick turnaround review and therefore I haven't put it through quite as thorough a test as I normally would. I'm definitely confident, having listened to both, that both outputs are very listenable and very enjoyable. Where I don't have a level of confidence is in saying whether they're absolutely identical, the XLR or the RCA outputs, and if there is a difference, how much it is. So I'm going to leave it as saying that both outputs are strong on sound quality. And then that brings us around to the comparisons. My first comparison is with the shit Bifrost 2. This is a DAC that I regularly recommend. I absolutely love the Bifrost 2 and I think it represents insane value for money. It's a little bit cheaper than the Kompakt depending on where you are and where you're buying it. But the reason I think it's a good comparison is that both of them are a different sort of take on R2R. Both of them use chips, although different sorts of chips to do the R2R work. And they're also what I call simple DACs. The reason I call them simple DACs is that there's no fancy bells and whistles. They're just DACs that you plug into your source, you take your output feeds from either XLR or RCA, and you listen to great music. You don't have Bluetooth, you're not worrying about filters, it's just a very simple plug and play device. So they're very comparable on paper in that regard, and yet when listening to them, they've got quite different sounds. In my opinion, both of these DACs are great examples of engaging and enjoyable DACs. Where the difference arises is that the Bifrost 2, to me, does have the overall edge. It produces a greater sense of space in the soundstage, and it also reveals some textual information and subtle sort of nuances that I wasn't hearing as much from the compact. As I said before, the Bifrost 2, in my mind, is absolutely special in terms of the price and the performance it provides. So the fact that it's edging out the compact is in no way a knock on the compact. It just, in this case, is more of an advertisement for how good the Bifrost 2 is. Now I say advertisement, but I should be clear here, there's no kickbacks or affiliates with either of these brands, either of these products. My point is the Bifrost 2 once again is proving itself to be an outstanding DAC and worth its price every single time. The compact though is equally an excellent DAC. While I was listening to both DACs and switching between the two, one of the tracks that came on was Far Away by Robert Cray. The sound from the compact as I was listening to the track the first time through was excellent. It was smooth, enjoyable, realistic, spacious. There was absolutely nothing that I would complain about. When I switched over though and listened to the track again, what I heard was an extra sense of depth in all of the sound and an element of nuance to a lot of the higher frequency details from the Bifrost 2 that I didn't quite get from the compact. So things like cymbals had sort of a layer of nuanced texture to them that the compact didn't quite achieve. Likewise, Robert Cray's vocals had a bit of texture that I didn't hear from the compact as well. So again, the compact is excellent. The Bifrost is just a little bit better still. It is worth mentioning though that not everybody wants to buy shit, because if you're outside the US, it can be a little bit harder, it can be a little bit more expensive, and they have got wait times at the moment. None of that's a knock on shit, it's just the reality of the marketplace. And so you might be looking at alternative DAC options. If you are, let's put the compact now up against something else you might consider. And it's very similarly priced, being the Burson Audio Composer. These both happen to now be Australian products. In the case of the Composer, it retails for just over $1,000 US, making them very similar in price. The Composer uses an ESS Sabre chip up against the R2R NOS configuration that's going on in the compact here. And yet, interestingly, I found the compact and the Composer to be much more comparable than the compact and the Bifrost 2. So even though the Bifrost 2 and the compact seem to be more similar on paper, the sound is much closer to the Composer than it is to the Bifrost. The good news is though, if you're interested in that R2R type sound, what the compact is offering over and above the Composer is a better sense of space and depth in the reproduction. The Composer brings a bit more treble extension and energy, which can at times get bitey depending on the recording. And so that's where you do hear kind of the R2R characters of the compact coming through. But on the flip side, in listening to certain tracks, I was finding the compact had a tonality that I preferred, especially with instruments that have a sense of harmonic richness. For example, one of the tracks I listened to on both of them was I'll Slip Away by Rodriguez. And in that track, at about the 150 mark, there's a very short acoustic guitar solo. Listening to that guitar solo on both, the compact filled out the guitar better. I'm not saying it thickened it up, but what I mean is it had a better sense of the tonal qualities of an actual acoustic guitar. It was like I could hear more of the resonance of a natural acoustic performance, whereas the Composer almost nudged it a little bit in the direction of what a synthesized equivalent would sound like. Now I'm exaggerating the differences between the two for the sake of illustrating it, but the reality is the compact to me sounded more natural and true to source, whereas the Composer in comparison did sound ever so slightly artificial. Of course, I don't know what the recording is meant to sound like originally, so I can only tell you that for me, the compact had a preferable tonality. I can't say that it's the correct tonality. Another thing that I noticed in comparing the two, and not so much on I'll Slip Away, but on various other tracks as I listened throughout my entire collection, just on shuffle, the other thing I noticed was that the compact presented a slightly fuller bass. It didn't get flabby or bloated or anything like that, but it just had a touch more presence and maybe a touch more punch compared to the Composer. I can see it being one of those things where some people are going to like the Composer for what may be perceived as its more neutral sound, and again, depending on your system that you're using, you may want that. Others, though, will prefer the slightly more analog sound that the compact provides. And when I say analog, and I use the inverted commas deliberately, what I mean is it's got that slightly smoother, but not blunted or rolled off, but a smoother sound with a little bit more fullness and presence. I can't stress enough, this is not a thick, muddy, rich R2R sound. As I've already explained, it's much closer to a Sabre DAC presentation than something like the Bifrost 2. Not that the Bifrost 2 is thick and warm and rich, no matter what you might hear on forums. All of them have their own characters in different ways. But I think most people will perceive the Composer as more neutral or analytical, whereas the Kompakt will be perceived as being slightly more kind of smooth, analog and enjoyable. Something else that's worth flagging in this comparison is the Composer offers you heaps of features that a simple DAC like the Kompakt doesn't. So the Composer has Bluetooth, it's got filter choices, it's got preamp capabilities, all those sorts of things that the Kompakt doesn't do. So if you're in the market for DACs like this, you might still want to choose the Composer if you're looking for those extra features. But if you're looking for pure sound quality, I do think the Kompakt has the edge by a very small margin over the Composer. Now, no doubt you're wondering if I'm going to compare the D90 SE up against the Kompakt here, given that they're both on my desk. And the answer is, I'm going to give you a sneaky quick peek, but I'm not going to go into detail. I'll save that for the D90 review. But for a sneaky comparison with the Kompakt, while I have the Kompakt here, what I'd say is that the D90 has a much flatter soundstage that's probably a little bit wider than the Kompakt. It also retrieves a little tiny bit more detail than I think I'm getting from the Kompakt. I personally still prefer the Kompakt from a general enjoyment and engagement point of view, but at the same time, the D90 SE is shaping up to be a really nice looking DAC, and I'm looking forward to reviewing it thoroughly. So to summarise my sneaky comparison, much like the Composer, if I was looking for pure sound quality, and by that I mean pure enjoyment, I would choose the Kompakt out of the D90 and the Kompakt comparison. If I was looking for features and functionality, the D90 SE is looking to be a really strong competitor in the Delta Sigma market. Of course, when I review the D90 SE, I will be putting it up against things like the Burson Composer again, and also probably something like the DAC stage of the Matrix Mini-I Pro 3 and or the SMSL SU8S. I haven't yet decided. So make sure you're subscribed and do stick around for that review, which I'll get done as soon as possible. For now though, let's sum up the Gieseler Audio Kompakt R2R NOS DAC review. What I heard in listening to this is a DAC that I could absolutely enjoy and live with day to day forevermore. In my comparison with other DACs, I did find things where some DACs do stuff better, some DACs had more features, but ultimately this is a highly enjoyable listen. If it weren't for the Bifrost 2 being in my collection, I do think the Kompakt would be one of the best, if not the best DAC that I've heard, other than the Hugo TT2. So to put that into context, what I mean is that for me, the Kompakt is right up there, not quite as good as the Bifrost 2, but I think comparable or better than the Composer, the original D90, the D90 SE, the Aries 2, and some of the cheaper options I've tried from companies like Gieseler Labs, from SMSL, and probably others that I can't think of right now. In other words, it's an excellent DAC. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand and you want to support a more local product, the Gieseler Audio Kompakt R2R NOS DAC is a great choice. I'm not sure the exact release date, but I do know it's going to be soon. If you're outside of Australia and New Zealand, I do believe you may still be able to purchase this, but I'm not 100% certain. I'll put a link down below through to Gieseler Audio so you can go through and check it out for yourself. As I mentioned before, there's no kickbacks or affiliates here. I just think the Gieseler Audio products are great and I was excited to try this one. I hope you found this review useful. If you have, I'd love it if you'd hit subscribe and like. Don't forget about the Palmu Quiet mini giveaway. All you need to do to be in that draw is be a subscriber and leave a comment down below about an area of the audiophile world that you'd like to know more about. Maybe something that confuses you about it. Other than that, I'll leave you to the music, so happy listening and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.